Hello and welcome back to Chitty Chats. Thank you all of those who are continually supporting the Chitty Chats movement, and for anyone that is joining me for the first time today, well, thank you very much for joining me, and I hope that you do enjoy this episode. I'll be talking to you about consistency today and why the notion of consistency is a very important one to implement into our daily lives. So the definition of consistency taken from the online Cambridge Dictionary is a noun, so that's a place, person or thing, and it's the quality of always being or performing in a similar way, or of always happening in a similar way. And the example it gives is they've won a few games this season, but they lack consistency. It's important to show some consistency in your work. And of course, the opposite of consistency would be inconsistency. So when we understand why consistency is an important habit to have, we can use it to our advantage. It's highly unlikely that we'll achieve great things if we are not consistently making smart decisions and taking the right actions. So what does it mean to be consistent? Well, when we're consistent, it means that we're dedicated to carrying an activity or completing a task. It means that we're clear on what we want to accomplish and are taking the necessary steps to achieve it. To be consistent is a commitment that we make to ourselves and others, and it's about keeping our word to carry out what we've agreed to do. And our level of consistency reflects our values and standards and reinforces our integrity, not just to ourselves, but to those around us, and reinforces that trust barrier. When we're consistent, it means that we're doing what's required now to achieve a better outcome in the future. And so consistency is about repetition. It's about doing the same things repeatedly over time to reach a desired outcome. So why do we struggle with consistency? Well, there are several reasons that we do. And some of these include the fact that being consistent and having to do the same task over and over can be quite repetitive and mundane. And so we lack the patience to do that. It becomes a bit monotonous. And another reason is that we look for instant gratification. So I did an episode previously on delayed gratification and the lasting effects of delayed gratification, but it's just human nature to want something instantly, to be spoon-fed, to have the desired results quickly rather than slowly. Another reason that it's difficult to be consistent is because we lack clarity, we lack focus. We have 1,000,001 things to do on a day-to-day basis, especially in the modern day. If it's not sending emails, then it's, filling up the fridge, whatever it might be, especially if you have a family. And so that can get in the way of some of your goals, and it shouldn't have to be like that, of course. And another reason that we might struggle with consistency is that we have this mindset of all or nothing. Now, I know this has affected me in the past, where I've wanted to have a six-pack, but I rather stay as I am because I'm not getting the results instantly. So I put myself off. But actually, if I took the baby steps required to get there, I'd get there eventually. And yes, it would be delayed gratification, but the feeling of success and that rewarding feeling would most definitely be much more lasting than if I had just been born like that, I suppose, which is unfortunate that we can't be. So just to give you an anecdote of how consistency has affected me, prior to starting Chitty Chats, I had really no expectations of which direction it would go. However, I still did it, of course, and it is slow progress. Nothing really happens overnight, but I do make sure. Initially I started off with a weekly podcast episode, and now it is a fortnightly, just because it's easier then for me to juggle things. And yes, they're not as regular, but the bottom line is they are consistent and they are being released consistently. And the reason that I have stuck to this particular project for so long is because of my past experience where I had an online e-commerce shop, and to be honest with you, it didn't really go the way that I desired. But that's, I think, in hindsight, because I didn't keep at it. I wanted instant results. I wanted to be successful right then and there, and actually that's not how these things work. Had I still had that shop, I probably would have seen an increase in sales over time. But again, that's because of the fact that I didn't stick at it. I was not consistent in continuing that project. That, of course, it led to the failure of that. Because there's obviously no steps being taken at all. So I'm now stagnant in that area. And that has been a failure in many ways because of that. So here are 5 reasons why consistency is an important habit. Now, of course, I have touched on a few of these, but I'll just explore them slightly more. So the first reason is that it develops discipline and self-control. And forming a new habit can be challenging because it's easier to go back to what we're comfortable with. And our ability to be consistent requires self-control, which means we don't allow ourselves to get off track. And this will help us develop the discipline required to keep on going. The second reason why consistency is an important habit to build is because it builds a higher level of trust. And the level of trust that we have with ourselves shows up in the level of trust others have with us. And being consistent will help to build that momentum. And this means that we'll also feel good about what we're working towards. Have you ever been in a situation where you are working towards something, and the more you keep at it, and the more you see the results, the more happier you feel? And so consistency really does affect other areas of your life. The third point that I want to make is that it can fast track your improvement or development in any area. Consistency will lead to progress, which can speed up the accomplishment of what we want, and in turn will build our self-confidence, which will help us set bigger and more challenging goals, and of course leading therefore to even more success, and perhaps success that we never even thought we would be capable of. So isn't that brilliant? Number 4 is that it will create accountability. Our results will reveal if we're consistent or not. If we know we're not on track, then we can hold ourselves accountable. And this means that we can adjust our actions or behaviours and keep progressing towards what we want. So it's a way that we can measure our progress and edit or adjust our actions and behaviours to suit our ultimate goal and to achieve it. And the 5th is that it will help you to stand out or be noticed. Small actions carried out repeatedly will amount to big results over time. When we do something for a long period, we will differentiate ourselves from those who aren't consistent. And this can help us attract new opportunities that may not have been possible if we had not been consistent. And here's a few ways that we can rethink consistency. So on the face of it, it might seem as though consistency is a very difficult thing to achieve, but actually it doesn't have to be. And here's a few things to consider when thinking about implementing consistency into your life. So it's very important to start with small steps. And we don't have to make drastic changes in such a short period of time, especially when we don't need to. And we can build towards something big by starting off with small steps. So as an example, years ago I went jogging with my brother, and I was a beginner. He had been a few times. And one of the techniques that he taught me is to use landmarks to create smaller goals in between where we were and where we wanted to get to. So for example, if we're jogging along, he would say to me, mark this tree, and then when you get to that tree, then mark the lamppost after it, and when you get to the lamppost, then mark the letterbox after that, etc., etc. And so this is all towards getting to the end goal, the last or the marked place that we've marked on the map. And by doing that, we are moving. Essentially, we are moving. We're not stagnant. We're not staying still. We're not going backwards. We are moving forwards. And eventually, you get to your goal by taking those small steps and without realizing, because you release that pressure, and it makes getting there seem like a doddle, Of course, I'm not saying it's easy, but it does make the whole process so much easier. And sometimes it is about perspective and releasing that pressure that we tend to put on ourselves. So another thing that you can do is creating a schedule or a plan which can help you to stay on track. And if we don't measure our progress, it is difficult to stay consistent. One way that you can do that is giving yourself marks out of 10 for how happy you are with yourself and with your progress on a day-to-day or on a weekly basis or whatever that might be, so that you can then look at where you need to improve and what things you can do to improve and to better get to your desired results. So another thing that's important is to make better use of your free time. So of course we all have essentially the same amount of time every single day, but learning to use our free time wisely can help us to stay consistent. If you set yourself up for failure, if you go out the night before and get sloshed when you know you need to be up early tomorrow to train, to go to the gym early, then you are going to fail. There's no doubt about it. So don't do that to yourself. Do not set yourself up to fail. And finally, give yourself a break. We can often be quite harsh on ourselves, and sometimes if we don't hit the target on a particular day that we are expecting ourselves to, but we have maybe consistently for the past few days, well, it's okay. Sometimes we have a bad day. Sometimes we get distracted, or sometimes, something comes up that's unexpected, and that's okay as long as you notice that, you take note of that, and you recommit to doing what is required to reach your end goal. So in conclusion, it's important to understand that we can, as a human race, as an individual, as a human being, accomplish anything that we want in life. There's no limit. There's no glass ceiling. But we have to have the right strategies in place, and we have to take the right actions consistently. And when we use consistency to our advantage, it will show up in how we feel and in the results that we create. If we don't develop consistency, then the chances of achieving what we want when we want are very limited. So something to action then for you is, I'd like you to choose a goal or something that you would like to accomplish, And then I want you to identify one action that is required to achieve it. Then create a plan that will track that action for at least 60 days or until it becomes a habit. And I'd love to hear how you get on, because I think that would be a great motivator for you and for any of my listeners. So good luck with that if you do attempt it. And just as a finisher, as you all probably know, I do love my quotes. And so I do have one today from an author called John Calvin Maxwell. He is an American author, speaker, and a pastor. He's written many books, primarily focusing on leadership. And this particular quote has been published onto my Instagram page purely because it's a very pertinent quote and obviously very relevant to this episode. And it goes like this: small disciplines repeated with consistency every day lead to great achievements gained slowly over time. So I will leave you to mull over that and come up with a nice action plan. Like I said, I'd love to hear from you, so feel free to email, DM, message, whatever it is, tag me in a post. I am more than happy to hear from you and share your stories as well, if that's okay, of course. But for now, that is it from me. Stay tuned for the next one.